Breaking news, Hurricane Ian, now a Category 4 storm as it makes its way closer to Florida.
Yeah, it is gaining strength as conditions across the state worsen.
So this is a major storm. It's something that we knew was going to be significant. The strengthening of this over the last night, has been really significant. It's potentially that it could make landfall as a Category 5.
I want to emphasize as people are watching what's going on behind me here with this rain pummeling this area of the state. This is still hours before the worst of Ian's impact is expected. As of 2 p.m., officials had said they did not want anyone left on the roads here. But the bigger concern here in the Orlando area is potentially more than 2 feet of rain, which could lead to flash flooding. And as we know from previous natural disasters we have covered, when flash flooding is in front of you, when you see that flooding coming, that potentially could be too late to get out of the way, Chris.
Hurricane Ian making landfall as a strong Category 4 hurricane, just shy of a Category 5. The record-breaking storm surge. Whoa. Ripping roofs off homes, sending debris flying. This time-lapse of Fort Myers Beach showing floodwaters taking over the streets. The president at FEMA headquarters today.
This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life.
Live at 5 o'clock, we're on your side, pushing for answers.
Yeah, a viewer called us for help after being suspended from their job for calling 911.
I said, this is ridiculous. I had a medical emergency and you all didn't do anything about it.
A few days later, after being cleared by her doctor, she went back to work and was told she was being suspended for abandoning her route.
I'm like, how did I abandon my route? I sent out the message, you all did not respond. I had a medical emergency.
She left that morning on leave without pay.
That's just totally just unfair, inhumane, no type of empathy, none whatsoever.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out my video. And I know this is kind of a late topic to bring up, but it's important because it just goes to show no matter where you are, if there's something going on in your area where there's an emergency, do not rely on the post office because it can be one of the last places to turn to for proactive engagement, I'll just say. In terms of, looking out for the workforce and closing to make sure that that it's safe for people. I found out from last year from Hurricane Ian that the post office actually didn't care and was more worried about saving money because they didn't want to pay admin leave. And so I wanted to cover that in this video, what to look out for. In case something happens to you, and to not really rely on the emergency line, because I know during the storm itself, they didn't even use it themselves, so I think that's a little bit negligent on their part, but it's a self-reporting issue. The issue is that they're the government, so they can create their own lies, basically, and they're not really held accountable to anyone. But at the end of the day, this was it was up to the district manager to make the final call as to whether or not to close facilities, and unfortunately in mine, he decided to leave it open even during the hurricane. So just keep that in mind. Don't trust these sources for information from work, because they can often be the least reliable. And this is just a reminder of that. During the days leading up to the hurricane, the post office was not very proactive. There were businesses, various businesses all over the place that were closed days before it ever made landfall. And the post office just decided it wasn't a big deal, or it wasn't going to affect us, without really looking at the information. There was reports of flooding, and even before that, there was going to be significant rainfall, that it was going to flood roads, but they chose to ignore that. At one point during the storm, the phone line wasn't even updated for about 6 hours, and they told us it would be updated every 2 hours. So they were negligent even during an emergency, ironically, for an emergency line. Another issue I had a problem with was they love to cite the civil service aspect of the post office, which is why they leave the post office open, supposedly even during hurricanes and stuff like that. But this was a situation where no one could get around on the roads because the roads were completely flooded. And at one point during the storm, one time that I called the emergency line, they actually told people not to come in for carriers, but plant employees were still expected to come in during all that flooding. And I know a coworker that I know that went to work during that day, the shift before the hurricane reached the facility, almost didn't make it. The phone line failed him. They didn't warn people like him to not come in. And this is, at the end of it, this is just cost cutting, because the district manager could have easily just advised that facility to remain closed during that storm, and they just wanted to save a penny here or there. In regards to abuse of civil service, they're basically treating it like an emergency first responder situation, which is ridiculous, because most people they're coming in on their personal cars. No one's really trained for that type of weather, and the expectation was so ridiculous that it basically just boiled down to greed at that point, because there's no reasonable way for people to get into work, but they still chose to ignore the warnings from news stations. And obviously it's the government itself, so they have access to resources to find out about weather conditions like this, and they seemingly ignored all that. In regards to what happened after, the union, our facility union, filed a grievance for that incident and gathered signatures from all the different tours. And fortunately, we won that grievance. But it was amazing to me. Even the union was saying I don't know if that was from the union side or what, but they asked us, kind of required us to present some type of evidence, like photos or something to submit along with the grievance to prove that it affected us personally, which I found ridiculous, because this is something that affected the whole state. And even in Orlando, which is very inland, there was flooding pretty much everywhere. So I didn't really appreciate that we needed to provide evidence for something that was commonplace. It didn't make much sense to me. And I just wanted to give that as a warning for people in other areas, that the post office is, in my opinion, very negligent, even in an emergency situation. You see that even in the news. I think the last video I saw about a case of negligence for the post office was a carrier that had an emergency, and they contact their supervisor through their scanner like they're trained to do, but the supervisor didn't follow up. And when the carrier was in the hospital, they were only concerned about the condition of the LLV. They were not concerned about the condition of the carrier, and that just goes to show the mentality around here. And it's a real issue, and it just goes to show that you have to think for yourself, because they really aren't looking out for you in here.